My master's degree is in math and statistics. I think that ultimately this question should be answered by linguists who are well versed in comparative linguistics, but I wanted to share the information that I have collected on the topic over the years. So let me start by saying that there are several words in the English language that linguists have confirmed or suspected entered into English from Greek and entered into Greek from the Medu-Neter language of the ancient Egyptians. And I will provide a link in the description of this video as a reference to these words that are either confirmed or suspected to have ancient Egyptian origins. So some of the words that are confirmed to have ancient Egyptian origins that came into English from Greek are the words gum, ebony, oasis, ibis, barge, and even the science term natron comes from the Medu-Neter language of ancient Egypt. And even the science terms ammonia and amino, as in amino acid, come from the ancient Egyptian god Amun. Some words that are suspected to have origins in the ancient Egyptian language are the words paper, alabaster, baboon, myth, pharmacy, and chemistry, coming from chem, as in chemet. Additionally, I've seen arguments that the word Sophia in Greek, which means wisdom, comes from the ancient Egyptian word Seba, which means star, or Sebat, which refers to wisdom literature. So I say all that to say that it's not uncommon for words in English to have origins in the Medu-Neter language of ancient Egypt by way of Greek. Next, I want to share the first time I encountered the argument that the word atom comes from Atum. And this was in my junior year as an undergrad when I read Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James for the first time. On pages 106 to 107, George G.M. James writes in Stolen Legacy the following: the identity between the Egyptian sun god Atum and the atom of modern science. There are two things which I desire to point out in connection with the relationship between Atum, the Egyptian sun god, and the atom of modern science. These things are: 1, the similarity of attributes, and 2, the similarity of names. 1, the Egyptian god Atum means self-created, everything and nothing, a combination of positive and negative principles, all-inclusiveness, and emptiness, a demiurge possessing creative powers, the creator sun. Atum also means the all and not yet being. As a god, Atum represents the principles of opposites. The atom, as the substratum of matter, according to Greek philosophy, is defined by Democritus as movement of that which is within that which is not. It therefore represents the principles of opposites and shows the identity between the Egyptian sun god and the substratum of matter. Furthermore, the atom is defined as the full and void, being and not being, and these definitions coincide with everything and nothing, and the all-inclusiveness and emptiness of the Egyptian sun god. The similarity of names shared by the Egyptian sun god and the atom of science. Now, with reference to the similarity of these two names, the first thing we should bear in mind is the fact that they both possess identical attributes, as has been already pointed out in section 1, and consequently, we are compelled to conclude that the atom of science is the identical name of the Egyptian sun god, the most ancient of gods except for Ptah, who was present with Atum at creation. The second thing we should bear in mind is the fact that the name of the god Atum belongs to the cosmology of the Memphite theology, whose date goes back to 4000 BC, when the Greeks were not even known. Consequently, we are compelled to conclude that the Greeks obtained both the original name and the attributes of the sun god Atum from the Egyptians. The atom of science is really the name of the Egyptian sun god that has come down to modern times through the so-called Greek philosophy and carries identical attributes with the sun god. It must be remembered that what we erroneously call Greek philosophy was the beginning of science, or the investigation of nature, and consequently we cannot separate modern science from Greek philosophy. Section 3. Memphite theology opens great possibilities for modern scientific research. Section A. Greek concept of the atom erroneous. The Greeks derived the meaning of the atom from 1. Alpha, i.e. a negative prefix meaning not, and 2. Temnian, i.e. the present infinitive active of temo, to cut. The two derivatives together meaning that which cannot be cut. For centuries, the world has been misled by the misconception of the Greeks, a fact which no doubt has impeded the progress of atomic research by Western scholars who had believed in the so-called Greek origin of philosophy or primitive science. Today, however, the Greek conception of the atom is no longer tenable since modern science has successfully split the atom. End quote. So now let's investigate the validity of the claims made by George G.M. James in Stolen Legacy. So first, when we look up the etymology of the word atom, it says the atom is a hypothetical, indivisible, extremely minute body, the building block of the universe, from Latin atomus, indivisible particle, from Greek atomos, uncut, unhewn, indivisible, from a meaning not, and tomos meaning a cutting, from timian to cut, from the Proto-Indo-European root tim meaning to cut. It is an ancient term of philosophical speculation presented by Leucippus and Democritus and revived scientifically in the 1800s by British chemist John Dalton. So the atom as a philosophical concept was presented by Leucippus and Democritus, who are called the fathers of atomism or the atomist philosophers. Not much is known about the life of Leucippus, and some people don't even believe he even existed, but it is a documented fact that Democritus studied in ancient Egypt for several years prior to the development of the atomist philosophy. The atomist philosophy was basically derived from a thought experiment that if you take some material substance and keep cutting it in half, eventually you'll get to a fundamental part of the matter which is not cuttable, or atomos in Greek, which means not cuttable. The A in atom, like the A in atheist, meaning not, atom means not cuttable, the A meaning not, and tom meaning cuttable. The etymology of the word atom also points to a Proto-Indo-European root tim, meaning to cut. So far, half of the claim of George G.M. James from Stolen Legacy appears to be correct. So now let's look up Atum. So I'll provide several links to the definition of Atum in the description of this video, but pretty much all the sources say that Atum is also called Atem, A-T-E-M, also called Tem, T-E-M, or Temu. In ancient Egyptian philosophy, Atum is a primordial creator deity from which all other matter came from. He was the origin of three phases of matter: air, water, and earth, or gas, liquid, and solid, personified as the deities Shu, Tefnut, and Geb, respectively. Atum's name means variously to complete, to finish, self-fulfilled, or undifferentiated. Atum's name is thought to be derived from the verb tim, which means to complete or to finish. Thus, he has been interpreted as being the complete one and also the finisher of the world. When we go to E.A. Wallace Budge's Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary, Volume 1, we see that Atem or Tim means to shut, to close, to make an end of, to finish, to complete, to come to an end, or to finish one's course, and it's cognate with Hebrew, Arabic, and Syriac words which mean to complete. Then you have the word Tim in this word Asar Tim Ur, meaning executioner. Then you have the word Tim, meaning to die or to perish, as in completing life or finishing life or death. And now you have the word Tim, meaning to cut. So we can see through the different semantic uses of the word Tim, meaning to finish or to complete, then to die, i.e. to finish one's life, then to executioner, one who finishes or completes or ends someone's life, then to cut, a process by an executioner that ends or finishes or completes one's life. So the second part of the claim of George G.M. James from Stolen Legacy appears to be valid in that both the atom and Atum have the same philosophical meaning in that they both refer to the origin of matter, and both share the same meaning in that the word atom comes from a word tim, meaning to cut, and Atum also comes from a word tim, which means to cut. So in conclusion, I'm also going to include in the description of this video a link to an article by a Nigerian brother where he wrote an article that says Atum is cognate of Atumu and Atamu. So when it comes to the Greek Atum and the ancient Egyptian Atum, there's evidence that the people did in fact make contact. There's evidence that the words share the same phonetics, and there's evidence that the words have similar meanings. In terms of falsification, of proving this idea wrong, right? One thing to consider is that there are concepts that are included in the Greek philosophy of the atom, in the Greek atomist philosophy, that are not a part of the ancient Egyptian philosophy. And conversely, there are concepts that are included in the ancient Egyptian philosophy that are not included in the Greek philosophy, right? Another thing to consider is that the Greek word tomos or tim, which means to cut, was probably not introduced into the Greek language by Democritus, right? Even though Democritus studied in ancient Egypt and may have been inspired to develop his atomist philosophy from ancient Egypt, he probably did not introduce the term tomos, meaning to cut, into the Greek language. However, that word may have entered the Greek language from the ancient Egyptian language by way of other means. Also, there was that word tim, which means to complete, that was cognate with Arabic and Hebrew and Syriac words. So there might have been another direction. One thing that I always ask myself is, if Democritus was learning in ancient Egypt, well, then what language was he speaking? Was he speaking the language of the ancient Egyptians? Were the ancient Egyptians teaching him in Greek? Or were there certain shared words that made communication between the ancient Egyptians and the Greeks possible? For example, some Zulu people can communicate with people who speak Swahili, even though they speak different languages, because there are shared words within both languages. I think for this argument, it basically comes down to if the Proto-Indo-European root tim, which means to cut, which is the accepted origin of the word atom, is cognate with or comes from the ancient Egyptian word tim, which also means to cut. And I know that PhD students have spent years studying and written dissertations on the connection between Proto-Indo-European and Medu Neter. So yeah, this is probably an interesting topic. I know that there's literally dozens, if not hundreds of hours of video online of people debating whether the word Kim in Medu Neter refers to black land or black people. If people need content for YouTube videos, I think this is another interesting topic to argue. This is another interesting topic to debate and to make videos about. But what do you think? Yeah, leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments. Does the science word atom and the ancient Egyptian word Atum, do those words share an origin? Let me know what you think. Peace.